Welcome to the Lucion podcast channel with me, Grace Matthews. I'm joined today by Regional Manager of Lucion Gateshead, Phil Hoggarth, where today we will be discussing asbestos on rail networks. Phil, when we talk about asbestos on the rail networks, is this just confined to the rail stations themselves?
Well, asset types can vary quite a lot. We can be working in operational stations. These can include structures actually on the stations, so things such as foot and vehicle bridges. We can work trackside, which involves obviously the potential to work with aggregates such as ballast materials, where we've often found asbestos materials before.
I suppose buildings is an obvious assumption when you talk about asbestos on the rail network, but when you talk about trackside, what exactly are you looking for and how did it get there?
A lot of the times we're looking for debris through buildings that have been demolished. You can often find a lot of mixed aggregate and contaminated land, and as a company we share a lot of our specialist areas of expertise, which allows us to cover a wide range of buildings and contan land, especially with the contaminated land side. The origin of debris can date back to buildings and structures that have been demolished, often with the asbestos still in situ, and then this area is then backfilled, and this can often lead to quite a nasty problem for future generations coming to clear sites.
Right. And as the types of assets in which asbestos is located and varies, and surely the risk associated with the asset varies as well.
Yes, definitely it does. Assessing the asbestos on the rail network requires us to have the ability to combine multiple skills in order to successfully mitigate risk due to the variance in assets.
So how many people are generally involved in the scope of works?
This can range quite a lot. It's often dependent upon the assets and project type that we're undertaking. Often during surveys of live areas, people such as station masters, operation managers and maintenance personnel are required to facilitate our safe working access. All the surveys that we undertake on the rail networks are carried out by a two-man survey team with a lead surveyor to supervise.
So with all these people involved in the scope of works then, surely this information needs to be communicated effectively across all networks. How is this done?
We currently provide clients with the data via our in-house developed next-gen system. The advantage of next-gen allows the end users to live data, so this is either supplied via links or direct via the client portal. One of the main advantages of next-gen from a user's point of view is the ability to track data and materials from the initial findings through to ongoing management and eventual removal.
So one challenge I'd imagine you to come across is when refurbishment works are being carried out. This isn't always out of station operating hours, so at what stage are Lucion required to carry out the surveys?
We can be asked to carry out the survey at a number of stages, often even within live areas. A certain degree of surveying can be carried out with a view to returning to these areas once they're vacated or outside of normal hours to undergo the more intrusive aspects.
So as the stations are constantly in operation, how does Lucion ensure minimal disruption during intrusive inspections?
Often when areas are in constant operation, we have to work in cooperation with the station master or operations manager to harass fence areas off, if we're accessing floor ducts, to cordon areas off if we're needing to utilise MUPs or high-level access ladders. So this often requires us to be mindful of when trains are going to be turning up, when the platforms are going to be occupied, and working around these situations to make sure that we gain the right level of access for the survey, and also that we don't cause any disruption to the live areas.
What about when something goes wrong? How does Lucion react to emergencies outside of normal planned works?
Well, similar to the other sectors that we work in, we're often required to react and attend site during unsociable hours. We can operate a 24-hour emergency response line to clients, which allows them access to our full suite of surveyors and analysts who are on call. So having this 24-hour response allows us to initially turn up on site, assess the situation and what needs to be undertaken, whether or not this be bulk samples collected, reassurance air tests run, and then it also allows us to use the surveyor or analyst's knowledge to liaise with the client and give them advice on the best way to move the situation forward.
So in your opinion, how can the risk to asbestos exposure be reduced?
I think at a very basic level, awareness training for members of staff to make them initially aware of what they're looking at, what they need to be asking to be undertaken. Gives people the foresight to then contact companies such as ourselves to come out and carry out the surveys, give them advice on what needs to happen.
So when it comes to selecting a provider, what would you advise duty holders to be aware of?
I think one thing the duty holders need to look for is that companies are part of the Achilles link-up scheme. This allows them to have peace of mind and know that the company that they're selecting are recognised as a approved supplier for the rail network, of which Lucion are part of. In addition to the Achilles link-up, UCAS accreditation in both testing and inspection is another vital accreditation to be looked for in an organisation. Another area that the duty holder should consider is the experience of the company that they're selecting, making sure that they're an experienced company and have done works on the rail networks.
So to summarise, what would you advise a duty holder to do in the first instance?
I think initially, Grace, the duty holder should be looking at what information they currently hold, so whether or not this be the basic level management survey, with an understanding of what materials they have to their buildings, their assets, trackside, and this will give them the basis to then move forward requiring pre-refurbishment surveys as and when works come about, and also it'll give them a platform to work from to manage their stock and manage the materials that are in their buildings.
Thanks, Phil. And for more information on asbestos on rail networks, please visit lucian.co.uk/infrastructure.